The legal ground under America's gun laws is shaking. A Supreme Court decision from 2022 has set off a chain reaction, and now the aftershocks are threatening to bring the whole structure down. Laws that have been on the books for decades are now facing an onslaught of legal challenges. From so-called assault weapon bans in states like California and New York to controversial red flag laws, a tidal wave of lawsuits is putting everything in question. In this video, we're breaking down which specific laws are on the chopping block and explaining how this legal earthquake puts your Second Amendment rights right in the middle of the fight. You need to know what's happening because the rules are changing fast. This is the front line of the Second Amendment battle, and things are evolving by the day. If you want to stay on top of these legal fights and understand what they really mean for you, make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on. You don't want to miss what comes next. Section 1. The Legal Earthquake. A new rulebook for gun rights. So, how did we get here? It all goes back to a single game-changing Supreme Court ruling from 2022, New York State Rifle Pistol Association versus Bruin. For decades, when courts looked at a gun law, they used a balancing test. They'd try to weigh the government's goal of public safety against your individual Second Amendment rights. It was a subjective, two-sided scale. But in the Bruin decision, the Supreme Court basically threw that entire playbook into a shredder. They replaced it with a simple but incredibly powerful new standard. The text is informed by history test. What that means is that for any gun law to be constitutional today, the government has to prove that a similar type of regulation existed back when the Second Amendment was written. If they can't find a clear historical tradition for that kind of law, the law is unconstitutional. That's it. This was the legal bomb that cracked the foundation of modern gun control. Then in 2024, the court gave us a little more detail in a case called United States versus Rahimi. They upheld a law disarming people under domestic violence restraining orders, explaining that the government doesn't need to find a historical twin, an identical law from the 1790s, but a historical analog. They found old laws that allowed for taking guns from people who were proven to be a danger to others. So, while Rahimi showed that not every single gun law is going to disappear, it hammered home that the Bruin historical test is the absolute law of the land. This set the stage for the unprecedented wave of legal challenges we're seeing right now. Section 2. The Hit List. 5 gun laws on the chopping block. All right, with this new text and history test locked in, the floodgates opened. Lawsuits were filed across the country. Let's get into the specifics. Here are the top 5 types of gun laws that are now fighting for their survival. Number 1. Assault weapon bans. For years, states like California, Maryland, and New York have banned modern semi-automatic rifles like the AR-15 by calling them assault weapons. The legal argument against these bans is now stronger than ever, and it's based on the common use standard from the 2008 Heller decision. That standard protects firearms that are commonly owned by law-abiding citizens for legal purposes. Gun rights groups point out that the AR-15 is the most popular rifle in America, with millions in the hands of law-abiding people. Banning it, they argue, is like banning the most common and effective tool for self-defense. In a move that disappointed gun owners, the Supreme Court declined to hear challenges to bans in Maryland and Rhode Island in June 2025. This means those laws stay in place for now. However, several justices made it clear the issue isn't going away. Justice Kavanaugh wrote that the court should and presumably will address the AR-15 issue soon, in the next term or two. The fight is far from over. Number 2. Magazine capacity limits. Running right alongside the rifle bans are laws that limit how many rounds a magazine can hold, often capping it at 10 or 15. The legal challenge is pretty much the same. It's a common use argument. The standard magazines that come with many of America's most popular handguns and rifles hold more than 10 or 15 rounds. A standard Glock 17 magazine holds 17 rounds. A standard AR-15 magazine holds 30. The argument is straightforward. If a firearm is in common use and protected by the Second Amendment, then its standard capacity magazine should be 2. Just like with the rifle bans, the Supreme Court also passed on hearing a challenge to Rhode Island's magazine ban in June 2025. But with 3 justices dissenting, it's obvious this issue is also on the High Court's to-do list. Number 3. Red flag laws. Red flag laws, or extreme risk protection orders, are easily some of the most controversial gun laws out there. They allow police to temporarily seize firearms from someone after a court is told they might be a danger to themselves or others. The legal challenge here has two parts. First, it's a major due process issue. In many states, guns can be taken ex parte, meaning the gun owner isn't even present for a hearing before their property is seized. Second, under the Bruin test, challengers argue there's no historical tradition of disarming someone who hasn't been convicted of a crime or formally declared dangerously mentally ill. The Rahimi decision, which allowed disarming someone after a domestic violence court order, might actually give states a constitutional roadmap for these laws, but only if they're written with strong due process protections. The weaker versions of these laws in many states remain extremely vulnerable. Number 4. Age-based restrictions. For a long time, federal law has stopped licensed dealers from selling handguns to adults between 18 and 20 years old. That rule is now under direct attack. In a huge ruling in January 2025, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit declared this federal ban unconstitutional in a case called Reese v. ATF. The court's logic was pure Bruce. They looked back at history and found that 18 to 20-year-olds weren't just considered the people protected by the Second Amendment. They were expected to have guns for militia service. The court found no historical basis for disarming this whole age group. This created a circuit split, where different appeals courts have ruled differently, which is one of the main reasons the Supreme Court steps in. The federal government chose not to appeal the Reese decision, making it law in the Fifth Circuit, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi. But the bigger question is headed straight for a final showdown. Number 5. Prohibitions on nonviolent citizens. This brings us to one of the most interesting legal battlegrounds. A federal law that permanently bans gun possession for anyone who is an unlawful user of or addicted to any controlled substance. With marijuana now legal in most states for medical or recreational use, we have a direct conflict. Can someone who legally uses cannabis in their own state be banned for life from owning a gun by the federal government? The courts are completely split. The Fifth Circuit has already ruled twice in a case called United States v. Daniels that this law is unconstitutional for a regular marijuana user, finding no history of disarming people for minor nonviolent offenses. Other courts disagree. According to the Department of Justice, there are 7 different petitions asking the Supreme Court to take up this very question. The court is expected to pick one and settle this for the entire country, affecting millions of Americans. Trying to navigate this legal maze is a nightmare for any gun owner. A law is in effect one day, then it's unconstitutional the next, but only in 3 states. It's a mess. And the fear of accidentally breaking a law you didn't even know existed is real. That's why having a plan for legal defense is more important than ever. We've partnered with the USCCA, which provides self-defense liability insurance and access to a legal defense network if you ever have to defend yourself. It's peace of mind in confusing times. Check them out using the link in the description. Section 3. What this means for you. Rights in the crossfire. So what does all this legal chaos actually mean for you? The biggest word is uncertainty. A law that's unconstitutional in Texas might still be fully enforced in Illinois. And it's not a one-way street. In March 2025, the Supreme Court upheld the ATF's regulation of ghost gun kits in a case called Bondi v. Vanderstock, showing the government is still winning some of these fights. Until the Supreme Court makes a final ruling on each of these big issues, we're living with a confusing patchwork of laws. You have to remember, a law is still the law until a court officially strikes it down. You can't just ignore a magazine ban in your state because you think it's going to be overturned eventually. That's a quick way to face a felony charge. This is why staying informed isn't just a good idea. It's essential for your own legal protection. This video isn't legal advice, but it is an analysis of the battlefield. Your fundamental rights are caught in the crossfire while these massive court battles play out. Knowing which fights are happening and where they're headed is the only way to navigate it safely. So let's bring it all together. The Supreme Court's Bruin decision completely changed the game with its text and history test. Because of that, huge parts of modern gun control, like bans on AR-15s and standard magazines, red flag laws, age restrictions, and prohibitions on cannabis users, are all facing their biggest legal challenges in modern history. The recent Rahimi decision kept the door open for disarming dangerous people, but made it clear that Bruin's historical test is the only way to get there. The entire legal landscape for gun rights is shifting under our feet. Over the next year or two, we fully expect the Supreme Court to take up cases that will finally decide the fate of these laws nationwide. The battle is raging in courtrooms right now, and the outcome will define your Second Amendment rights for generations. This story is moving fast, and we'll be covering every development right here. To make sure you get our next critical update, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for all notifications. Drop a comment below, and let me know which of these laws you think will be the first to fall. Stay safe, stay smart, and stay informed.